weary wanderer along the mountain track. And as I go, I love to sing, my knapsack on my back. Val-de-ree, Val-de-ra, Val-de-ra, Val-de-ree, Val-de-ra, my knapsack on my back.
Woods and Waters, with your host, Bud Leavitt.
Greetings, and here we are again. Woods and Waters for the 12th season. Doesn't seem possible we've been doing this for 12 years, but somehow that's the way it goes. Well, it was quite a decent summer, and I hope it was fine by you. I hope there are a lot of good memories, whether you were blue fishing, camping, brook trout fishing, landlocked salmon fishing, or even fishing for the Atlantic salmon. I hope you had good memories, and I hope sometime perhaps you might sit down and tell me about it. You know, I'm going to do a little bragging tonight for starting off this series. I had a great year. Health-wise, pretty good fishing, met some wonderful people, did some very exciting things. You know, everybody likes to brag, and I go along the street and someone would reach into their wallet and out comes a picture of a nice fish. It may have been taken at Beach Hill, may have been taken at Mopang, may have been taken at East Grand Lake, Sebago, Rangeley, or wherever. And I look at it and admire it, and you know, I always thought, well, you know, I've never done that. I've never carried around one of those things to show any of my friends, but I got reason though this year. In all my days, I had never caught a brook trout in excess of 5 pounds and 2 ounces. I did that one fall during the fall run up the Allagash River, just above the tramway coming out of Chamberlain Lake with a wonderful and late Al Nugent. I was fishing with Nuge, and luckily this day made a decent cast and got this fish, and it was a magnificent thing. Beautiful color, female fish in the fall of the year. Beautiful thing that weighed 5 pounds and 2 ounces. Well, I don't know how many years ago that was, but it was a long time ago, and I had high hopes maybe someday I'd catch a larger brook trout. Hopefully, I thought maybe that will happen. Well, it never happened, and many years passed until this summer. This summer, with a group of friends that I'd fished many hours in the places like Honduras and the Rockies and Alaska and other places. Our annual trip this year took us to Labrador. We fished a lake up there where there's a no-kill rule. And I just happened to bring my pictures along, see? I want to show you one. All right. That was a get-up, and of course I'm explaining and telling them just exactly how this ought to be done. Here's one of the small fish that were taken, a small brook trout, perhaps 3.5 or 4 pounds. It was turned back into the water. This gentleman is watching tonight from way up in Stevenson, Newfoundland. They watch us up there through cable. And, oh, I can't show you that one. That isn't the one. That's the one I'm saving for last. Here's one that I got with a wonderful man named Percy Payne from Stevensville in Newfoundland. And Percy's probably as nice a guide or a nicer gentleman as I was ever with. He's up in Stevensville, and hopefully tonight the cable is working and he's watching. That was my catch for the day, and we come in at noon. He held it, the only fish that we managed to keep. There's another one. I'll tell you about my fish in a moment. Here's one that went just a trifle more than 7.5 pounds. A little bigger than the one that I had. But my prize was this one, 7 pounds and 5 ounces. I finally broke that 5 pound, 2 ounce figure for an eastern brook trout taken in Maine's Allagash. And this one here, we kept. That one is mine. And then there are other memories too. Caught myself a decent Atlantic salmon this year. And Jimmy Capelin, if you're watching tonight, you did a great job netting this fish, and it was released and put back into the river. So there were some good memories, and I don't generally carry around my pictures, but I wanted to do a little bragging on this first show of the season. Incidentally, if you have a particularly good picture in color and a short description of some unusual or exciting experience you had sometime this summer in Maine, or anywhere for that matter, be it the province of New Brunswick or any one of the neighboring states where they watch woods and waters, I'd be very happy to talk about it, and if you write and send along the picture, I'd be glad to show it. We'll pop off a little bit like I've just done. Now, that'll be the end of my bragging for this year. I do want to take note that this summer there were a couple of sad moments in my life and in the lives of many, many people who knew these two. Patty Nugent, Al Nugent's widow, passed away this summer, and if ever there was a legend at Chamberlain Lake, it was Patty Nugent, a grand lady. She died this summer, and her passing is missed by an awful lot of people. And then our opening, of course, there was a wonderful man by the name of Woody Wheaton of East Grand Lake and Forest City. Our opening shows him where he's chuckling and laughing for a simple reason that one night I had him on here a little more than a year ago, and Woody, I said, you fished some great people for the last 60 years of your life. Who's the greatest fisherman that you ever fished with? He looked at me right between the eyes and said, "'Twa'n't you." And at that precise moment, I felt my love for Woody Wheaton just carried on. His passing too, well, it was tough for the Maine scene this year, but two grand people, and they ought to be remembered as we embark on this new season. The new season, well, we've been doing this show, as I say, for 12 years. My program guest tonight has been the first-timer, the opening night performer for, I guess, 7 of those years, because we talk about the white-tailed deer. Gerry Lavigne, wouldn't be a good season if we didn't open the year without Gerry here to talk about our deer population, the status of it, and perhaps tell you just a little bit about where we stand with respect to present management programs. You haven't aged a bit since last year.
You're very complimentary.
Oh, really? Gerry, good to see you.
Thank you, bud.
I want to talk about deer tonight.
Okay, let's
More than Maine deer. I want to talk about that species called white-tailed deer. I'm in your class tonight. I'm a raw rookie. I know absolutely nothing. I may come up with an occasional question. Where did the white-tail emanate from? Let's go back to the days of the Pilgrim. Were there white-tailed deer in that time?
Oh, there certainly were. White-tailed deer are present in the fossil record of North America for as long as several million years ago. The white-tailed deer is a truly native deer species for North America. Today, its distribution ranges all the way from southern Canada to northern Venezuela, and there are several races or subspecies of white-tailed deer. Some people count as many as 30 distinct subgroups of deer across this enormous range. And of course, the size of that range is tribute to the tremendous adaptability of the white-tailed deer across all of these diverse habitats.
Well, to my knowledge, there are 3 principal deer in America: the white-tail, the black-tail, and the mule. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
All right. Why the many subspecies of the white-tailed deer? This is a question that puzzles some people, including me.
Okay. There are also several subspecies of mule deer,
mule,
too,
okay.
to be recognized there. But all of these subspecies of whitetails are the same deer. It's all the white-tailed deer. It's just that the different subspecies may vary slightly in size, at maturity, or antler characteristics. Some subspecies are known for larger antlers, even on smaller body size, and other subspecies, like our own, is known for very large antlers on very large body size. As you well know, in Maine, we have bucks that are taken which dress out in the high 200s. A rare buck dresses out near 300 pounds. This northern subspecies is characteristically large, both in body size and antler.
But generally, if we had a map here, the white-tailed deer's principal range, however, is not the northeast, but let's say Virginia North, an imaginary line across the lower part of Wisconsin, Iowa, up through Minnesota and the Canadian provinces like Manitoba and across to the province of New Brunswick? But isn't the principal range in the northern part of the United States?
Oh, absolutely not. You may be
doing
surprised.
well, absolutely not.
You're failing the test, bud. You'd be surprised to note that there are only 4 states, maybe 5, of our 50 United States that do not have white-tailed deer. And white-tailed deer are very common, even in the southeast and the very southern parts of the United States.
Yeah, but that wasn't always true, was it?
What was not generally true at the time that the Pilgrims first settled here was that the northern part of the range was scarcely or sparsely settled by white-tailed deer. They occurred more southerly in the mid-Atlantic states and southern New England, and not in the northern fringe of the United States and southern Canada.
Well, what you're saying is I have it in reverse.
That's correct. Yeah. Let's focus on Maine for just a moment. Maine was first settled around the early 1600s, 1620. There was a settlement in the south coastal Maine. And it's known that there were white-tailed deer on the coast of Maine at that time, but only on the coast. They extended just a short distance inland from the coast and only as far eastward as Bar Harbor. White-tailed deer were absent in central, western, and northern Maine at that time. It took, in fact, nearly 300 years for the white-tailed deer to reach its full extent in the state of Maine. Deer first showed up, for example, around Fort Kent at the turn of the century, around 1900. And that's not widely recognized.
The first white-tailed deer
correct.
in that part of the world?
That's absolutely correct.
In the turn of this century?
That's correct. Yeah. There are 2 factors that favored the whitetail's expansion from southern New England to all of New England and southern Canada. The first thing is that there has been, over the last 300 years, a general warming in the climate. In fact, people who study ancient weather patterns and things like that suggest that the period from AD 1200 to almost 1900, this 600 or 700 year interval, as they call that, the Little Ice Age, and it was an extremely cold period in North American history. Since about 1900 or 1880, the climate has generally warmed up, and this translates into lower snow depths and milder winters, which favored survival of white-tailed deer and expansion into southern Canada. Along with that has been a tremendous change in the forest as one wave after another of logging took place, first in colonial times for the pines, and then in the middle of the 1800s for spruce and pine saw logs, and later on for pulp during this current century. Each wave of logging produced a habitat type that favored white-tailed deer.
Well, Florida has a so-called key deer, right?
That's correct.
And that's the whitetail.
That's the same white-tailed deer, only a vastly different subspecies.
That's a subspecies.
That's correct.
Manitoba has a white-tailed deer.
Yes.
Is that deer as large or bigger than ours?
Slightly larger. That subspecies averages slightly larger than our northern white-tailed deer, called a boreal subspecies.
Now, why is that?
It's just regional genetic differences in populations of deer. They're just genetic entities. They're still white-tailed deer, but they're distinctly different in size.
The reason I'm talking about deer tonight, I had a telephone call from the Mama Baldacci Yachting, Polo, and Swimming Club, I think, where they were breakfasting, and there was a great conversation about deer, and I was called in as the authority to speak to this group and answer this group, of which I took no part. I wasn't going to have any part of that, see? but there was a great argument about the range of the white-tailed deer, and you've added something to it tonight. So you're telling me that the whitetail that I see in Alabama, that I might see and that I will see in Mississippi, and Texas, of course, I've seen it down there and so forth, is the same species of deer that I might find on the California road up in the Allagash country.
The same species, but a different subspecies. It would be a different.
How do you define what's a true
subspecies.
species and a subspecies? I hope this isn't boring you, but it's at least interesting to me.
The real test for a separate species is that two of the different types would not be able to mate and produce viable offspring. A subspecies can still cross with another subspecies of white-tailed deer and produce the same thing, white-tailed deer. There are genetic differences between species, and there are very few genetic differences, not enough differences to preclude viable breeding between subspecies.
Will a mule deer and a white-tailed deer get together?
Generally not. They're separate species.
I know they're separate species.
Yeah, and behaviorally and genetically, they're not compatible.
But here's the boundary, the state boundary. Now, there are blacktails over here and mules over here. And you're telling me that they perhaps will not get together during the rutting season?
Behaviorally, they will not.
Huh.
Behaviorally, the behavior and genetics just isn't compatible.
I'm not sure I'm happy you're my guest on this program tonight. Well, that's interesting. That's interesting. Very interesting. Well, let's come home just a little bit.
Okay.
We're into the white-tailed deer season in Maine today. Thus far, I can tell you that the deer kill has been light. I have no official figures on it, but the kill has been very light. Extraordinarily warm weather last week. It was just out great weather for raking leaves and doing other chores, but not too good for deer hunting. Why the fall off in the deer kill? I realize it's totally early in the year to make a...
It's not too early to count out the deer season at this point. We're just 1 week and a few days into the season as we go to air tonight. In general, though, we did expect a lower deer harvest this year than last year, number one. But number two, I don't believe for this first week that the hunting pressure was out there in as great a numbers as it was last year. And so for that reason alone, the first week kill appears to be light. And our indications from sampling hunters at check stations on the interstate this past weekend were down quite a bit from the year before. The deer we've seen, though, have been in very good condition, and the hunters have been telling us, those that stop in, that they generally have been seeing a considerable amount of deer sign in the woods, so that's favorable. However, I think pressure is mostly the problem at this point, hunting pressure.
Where are the soft spots in the state of Maine map right now?
We have, as you know, divided the state of Maine into 17 and now 18 deer management districts. Number 18 are the coastal islands. Maine does vary tremendously in carrying capacity for deer. Right now, we're having the most difficult time getting the deer herd to increase at an accelerated rate in Washington County. Deer
well, hasn't that been true
17.
for the last 4 or 5 years?
Well, more than that. This is our 7th year now with a bucks-only season in Washington County. There's been very limited response in the population
Why would that
to
be?
this.
Some of the greatest deer country in all the state 20 years ago.
Yes, in fact, a little longer than that. In the 1940s, Washington County was the premier hunting spot for the state of Maine. It produced the highest deer kill for that decade, and it began to drop off since then. True, there have been habitat changes, and we've lost a lot of wintering cover in many parts of the state, including Washington County. We've reduced the doe kill legally right to zero because it's bucks only hunting, yet we haven't seen a strong response. The basic problems we feel are that predation by coyote and possibly black bear, in concert with all the other mortality added together, the road kills, illegal hunting, sometimes disease, sometimes starvation
But
losses.
Jerry,
is
aren't
just
those
holding
the
the
same
herd down.
things we've been saying for 10 or 15 years? I mean, the road kills can't be too many because there are no deer.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, road kills are few, but
Well, yeah.
they do add up.
Oh, sure.
In the spring, when a doe is hit by an automobile and she's carrying twin fetuses, that makes a difference. And it occurs in Washington County as well as elsewhere. But even in the north where we've cut back, we have seen a response in the herd, and we're not seeing it in Washington County.
Well, there has to be something else. You know.
If you can suggest another,
Well, I know
another
that.
factor,
I know,
I
okay.
would like to examine it and study it.
I know you would. I know you would. But
we can't find it.
Well, you know, I recall going down the airline Route 9, stopping at Mother Mesa's, Ma Mesa's store in Amherst, and you know, and look at the book, 600 deer, 556 deer registered out of the book, and that's not too long ago. You could get down there and stop in Mesa's store and get a little information and come up with a column.
Very few today.
You could sit there for an hour waiting for anybody to come by and register a deer. And I've been hearing this about poaching and about coyotes and about bear. I've been hearing this since I had hair. And it's the same argument. I mean, there has to be something else of why that deer population has not multiplied down there.
The only other factor would be the habitat and food. And based on the condition of the animals that do occur in Washington County, they're every bit as well fed and productive as the herd elsewhere in the state. I mean, we have 6-month-old fawns that are conceiving offspring in Washington County, just as we do in our farmland area here near Bangor. The productivity is there, but it doesn't survive for that period between birth and age 1. We're losing our productivity.
Doesn't survive from productivity
Right.
from birth to age
Right.
1.
The does are becoming pregnant, and they're producing that offspring, but survival doesn't appear to be there. Also, along with that, there is continued mortality of the adults themselves. And we're just not reducing the doe harvest and the doe kill low enough to allow that herd to take off again. We've succeeded in that in just about all of the other districts. But
What do these tell
it
you?
hasn't worked.
What do these tell you?
These antlers are very important pieces of information to us if we sample enough of them. Every one of these are from deer that are 1.5 years old. As you can see, there is a tremendous variability in the size of these
Hold
individual
it right up there.
these individual racks, ranging from some quite respectable antler size that many hunters may confuse with an older deer, maybe 2.5 or 3-year-old deer. This is not. This is 1.5 years. The antler growth in young deer is a direct reflection of its food quality. When the deer population is very high in relation to the food, then it's not going to produce large body size or large antler size. When the population has a very abundant and high quality food resource, then it's going to be producing antlers in this range. We're using antler size of yearling bucks to tell us whether the herd's in balance with its food supply or whether they are too abundant for the amount of food available. And it's not only just that we want to produce a certain antler size for hunting harvest, because these individuals are an indicator of the entire herd. And when the bucks are producing very runted antlers, the does are also hard put to find quality food, and they're not producing many or very valuable offspring. So we're using this as an easily collected index to the herd quality.
Jerry, you got 2 minutes to tell me where we're going with the deer herd in Maine as we go into the 1991s, into the 90s.
In the 1990s,
what's the future?
We're looking to continue to increase the deer population to about 300,000 deer.
Well, you told me that last year.
That's right. We currently have in the neighborhood of 250,000. We're not going to reach that population objective unless all areas, including Washington County, can be increased. If we can't do that, we're going to have to back up to another set of objectives. But for now, we're trying to manage for a larger population than we had in the 70s, but one that is not so abundant that it's producing poor quality animals. We're trying to produce a compromise between these extremes. And we look to use the current any deer permit system that we have in place now, refine it, and continue to manage the deer herd.
Will we maintain, will we continue the doe permit system?
Absolutely. Our plans, and it appears to be working very well in achieving the right harvest. Last year, 1989, for example, we were within 2% of our doe quotas using these permits, and we issued 56,000 permits to do that. It seems to be working very well.
In light of the fact that you already have a jump in the season, this being a week into the season, what is your number, your forecast? And I have to confess, you were very close to mark last year.
I put it in writing right here last March, Bud.
All right, I haven't seen that.
Somewhere in the neighborhood of 28,000 deer, which would be 2,000 less, maybe 2,500 less than last year. We reduced the doe quota to address some severe winter problems, central and north, and we expect a few less bucks than last year. In short, 3,000 less than last year.
Why fewer less bucks? You have 15 seconds to tell me.
When above average severe winters occur, then these younger bucks are less abundant in the population. That translates to fewer bucks for the hunters.
Does the future look bright in your mind?
Future looks much brighter, yes, than it did in the 1970s when we were not regulating the harvest adequately.
Gerry Lavigne, it's always nice having you.
Thank you.
It's good to be here. You're a veteran on television each and every year for the last 7. Hope you enjoyed tonight's program devoted to the deer. I'm Bud Leavitt, wishing you a good evening.
Along the mountain track, and as I go, I love to sing, my knapsack on my back. Val-de-ree, Val-de-ra, Val-de-ra, Val-de-ree, Val-de-ra, my knapsack on my back. I wave my hat to all I meet, and they wave back to me.